On to our third session of the day, and we're going a bit introspective with this one. It's time to talk about branding, and more importantly, who do you and who do your audience think you are? You're browsing online, you see a red heart. What does that make you think of? What about a yellow bear, a red nose, or even when you see a panda, do you think WWF, or do you just think, well, that's a cute panda? As charities, we want our brand to be instantly recognizable to the point your audience see it and immediately think of your mission, your services, and your campaigns. As we grow, change, and adapt to new marketing environments, our brand should adapt as well. For some charities, this might mean a total rebrand, while for others, it might mean understanding how to better represent and align your existing brand image online. There's a lot more to it than just nice logos and bright color schemes, though. You need to think about budget, strategy, your goals, and of course, more importantly, your audience. During 2020's lockdown, Blood Cancer UK launched a brand new brand to better reach, engage, and support people affected by blood cancer. And we've invited Helen, Head of Brand and Communications, Liam, Digital Marketing Manager, and Lawrence from Blood Cancer UK to talk you through their rebrand story and share with you how they harness the power of digital to reach new audiences. Welcome, everybody. How are we today?
Good, thank you, Chris. How are you doing?
I can't complain. Fabulous, thank you. I will leave it to you good people then, and I'll join you back here for Q&A in about half an hour.
Lovely, thanks, Chris.
Nice one.
Hi everybody. As Chris said, my name's Helen. I am the Head of Brand and Comms at Blood Cancer UK, and with me I have Lawrence. Lawrence, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Lawrence. I'm the External Comms Manager at Blood Cancer UK.
And Liam?
I'm Digital Marketing Manager at Blood Cancer UK.
Fab. And we've just got a few slides to run through with you today, so just bear with me whilst I share my screen. Let me know if anything goes wrong, guys. Can everybody see this?
You're a bit quiet, Liam.
Lawrence, tell me, can you see that?
I can see it, yeah. I was just saying, I think someone in the chat said Liam's a bit quiet.
Yeah, you're all good.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so what we're here to do today is to take you through our experience of the last year, launching a rebrand on a low budget, how to be agile and audience-led when it comes to brand image, what we learned launching during the pandemic, how we use paid social to achieve both fundraising and brand goals, and what some stats around what the impact has been of our rebrand 1 year on. So, but to kick off, I thought it's just worth telling you a little bit about us. So we're a charity, but we're essentially a community of people who are dedicated to beating blood cancer, and we do that through research and by supporting people affected. We were launched in 1960, so it was also our 60th anniversary last year, and we were called Leukemia Research Fund at that time. And since that time, we have spent more than £500 million on blood cancer research, which has led to lots and lots of breakthroughs in that field. We've also had numerous brand changes, the majority of which have been in the last 10 years, to basically represent the fact that we're here for more than just people affected by leukemia, but by all different types of blood cancer. But unfortunately, those rebrands have led to some confusion and misunderstanding about what we do as an organisation. So back in 2019, the decision was made to rebrand again, to bring clarity to who we are as an organisation and make sure that people really knew what we stood for and who we were there to support and how we were going to beat blood cancer. So without further ado, the original plan for launching was probably similar to quite a lot of rebrands. We were going to do some pre-launch teasers. We were going to do, we had a whole plan around kind of sharing some teasing stats around, some teasing images around well-known people who changed their names to become famous. We had a full brand campaign plan. So we had a brand film. We were going to do some digital promotion. We were going to do some out of home. We were also going to engage healthcare professionals in hospitals through our ambassador network by taking our healthcare information into hospitals. And we had a very ambitious plan to create the longest thread in the world, to connect with our supporters for them to share their stories. And behind, our brand is really the purpose of what we're here to do. So we call it our because, and we wanted everybody to share their own becauses. So that was the plan, and we also wanted to obviously capture a lot of brand imagery at upcoming fundraising events, things like the London Marathon. So grand plans. But then coronavirus hit, and it was very clear that we weren't going to be able to deliver on some of those plans, whether it was appropriate or not. We found that calls to our support line were higher than we'd ever seen before. So we had 1,100% increase in contact to our support services in March 2020 compared to the previous March. People affected by blood cancer have very distance and were very much at high risk from COVID. So obviously they were very scared. They wanted to understand more about how the COVID was going to affect them. So yeah, it was off the scale really, and we had to divert some of our internal resource to be able to cope with that support service. In addition to that, our photo and film shoots have been put on hold. So obviously we couldn't go and take pictures or film anybody with blood cancer because they were all shielding. So we hadn't been able to finalize all of the brand collateral that we needed to do the launch that we wanted. And also because we weren't sure what the impact of the pandemic would be, then our promotional budget was put on hold, with the exception of a small amount to boost organic social posts. So we didn't have, at the point of launch, much budget to do anything, but it wasn't really appropriate to do a brand launch at that point anyway, in the true sense. The brand campaign that we planned wasn't what people needed to hear or see. What they wanted to hear was the latest information on COVID, how it was going to impact them, how it was going to affect them, what the risks were. So we needed to shift to kind of focus on what our community needed from us at that point. So the shift went very much from brand to COVID. So really, the focus was 100% on being there for the people that needed us. But by doing that, we made ourselves really relevant. So we spent a lot of time listening to our community, helpline, we have an online forum as well, and through social media. We were also responded to the news agenda, and we had quite a lot of success with media because we were responding to that news agenda, and we were advocating on behalf of people with blood cancer in various different ways through the year, whether that was kind of prioritizing people for vaccines, trying to get more information about how COVID would impact on people affected by blood cancer and what their level of risk was. Turns out they're one of the highest risk groups of all. And ultimately we were living the brand rather than promoting it. And I'm going to pass over now to Lawrence to talk you through a few examples specifically about how we were doing that through organic social.
Yeah, so I was thinking back to when we changed our name to prepare for this, and it was just a real blur at the time. Like Helen said, we had these like fun plans to get our name embedded with our new audience, and they're immediately put on the shelves. But like Helen says, there was something that was much more important to audience at the time than doing tweet threads and that, and it was just the pandemic and that information and the changing guidance. So yeah, we had to. This was an example of a post we did just after Boris's announcement that we're going into lockdown, and we're used to getting posts with a couple of hundred comments, and now we're getting like 2,000 comments. So we had like a stressful couple of days, a few weeks. So we had to completely remap all our processes. We started using Sprout, which is great, using the inbox function. But yeah, obviously we're all stressed out, but every cloud has a silver lining, and people will come into us and telling us exactly what they're mind and reaching out to us in a way that we couldn't have foreseen. So we couldn't have a big splash of brand launch. But we were able to, with our first sort of post as Blood Cancer UK, demonstrate that we were completely aligned with what our audience and support was needed in that moment. So this was our first brand communication, and it was people with blood cancer were struggling to get delivery slots. putting themselves at risk, going to busy supermarkets. So you can see by the date, that's April the 4th, we got that out really quickly, and it resonated really, really well. You know, it's quite quick. We got it done. It might not win any design awards, but it was the sort of blueprint for how we approached our social media posts and our social media plans going forward. And you know, it feels really aligned with you know, how we're positioning ourselves. So, as I think someone in the chat asked what Sprout is, this is Sprout. Perfect timing. So this is a calendar we use. That's how we post plan all our content through Sprout. It's a platform we use. I'm sure you've all plenty of seen stuff like that before. We went to a 1 to 2 week planning cycle, which meant we could be really super agile, which was really important because news and guidance was developing so fast that we needed to be able to change everything around really quickly. Yeah, so we had all the ingredients. We had a nice new brand, and our processes are good. And this is how we've been approaching our content over the past year. So this is kind of a bit of a cross section of content that we've used. So we use a tool called Market, which enables us to create these nice little designs to react to stuff really quickly, get our lovely Be Heart logo, we call it, into all our comms. And yeah, our approach to social over the past year has been to you know, give our reaction to breaking news that happens. It's the most important thing to us. People are coming to our channels because, you know, there's a real need for information, especially about shielding to changing guidance. So that was kind of our number one priority. We wanted to try new things and experiment. The design, sorry, someone in the chat said the design tool is called Market. Helen could speak to that a bit later. So yeah, we want to experiment, be optimistic, have fun, and you know, show our personality through the stuff that we posted. So next slide. So yeah, here's a bit of example of some of the stuff that we've done over the past year. This was something we did really quickly to react to the news that Burberry were creating a £90 mask. So for one day we put our masks up to £90, and this is Helen. She's appears in a lot of our photographs because obviously we've had quite a bit of difficulty getting photographs. So Helen stepped up, and she's a great model, as you can see. So yeah, and I kind of, how we approach it is, if you can make something in like half an hour, and then just go for it. And following on from that, we did a little post on the next slide where we reacted to some breaking news, which was a little bit of a tease at Noel Gallagher, who was refusing to wear a mask during the pandemic. So he just knocked this out really quickly. And you know, it's about knowing your community, because our support service is always feeding back the information about what is motivating our community and our audiences. You know, people with blood cancer are vulnerable, so we thought this was quite an easy one for us to have a little cheeky tease at Noel. And on from that, we've also did a similar one with the fact that this next job could be in cyber, which was a government campaign, and we knocked something out really quickly there as well. So obviously we didn't want to go too far because, you know, they might give us some funds at some point. Yeah, so and it's not just all breaking news stuff. It's we wanted to experiment with all different types of stuff. So this was a children's competition we ran, because we've got a range of cards, and we asked for children to do the next cards. You might have seen like kids were doing rainbows for the NHS in the windows, so we kind of tapped into a little bit of that. So, and I think that's the next slide. Yeah, and here's just us jumping on some of the other things. On the left there is our response to the David Hockney in Piccadilly. We did our own lovely logo. In the middle is an April Fool we did called Do Your Bitcoin, which we just thought was kind of funny, and we actually fooled some people. And yeah, this is just us obviously doing the May the 4th Star Wars meme and getting our name in there. So we didn't always get it right. I wanted to show this because this was something that we did around the time of the Dolly Parton Challenge. It was a bit before we changed our brand, but it just shows the fact that you know, you want to do stuff really quickly. You're not always going to get it right, and yeah, that was a bit of an internal. That one got never saw the light of day because this is our celebrity supporters. So we've got Alistair Campbell, calendar girls, Simon Thomas and Sam Hewen, and yeah, we thought the bottom right picture might be a bit explicit for our socials. So yeah, that one didn't see the light of day. So yeah, in summary, how we've approached it throughout the year, we've always looked at it as our social channels to get ourselves as much cut through as we can, to show our personality through it, what we're acting to. Obviously, we can't spend money, so we've got to be a little bit different. We've instilled a really good culture in our team. Everyone's always coming up with ideas, and we sort of see our role in our social channels is also keeping up spirits as well, alongside the supporting comms. And because our support line are always feeding us back, telling us what people are asking, and they're coming through our social channels, we can we can react to that really quickly. We've had some good feedback and other stats, and I'm sure Helen will talk about that a bit later. So I'll pass back to you, Helen.
Thank you. Thanks, Lawrence. So yeah, basically, as I mentioned earlier, we were really hampered by the fact that we couldn't do the planned photo and film shoots. We did some before we launched, but we couldn't finish them all, so we couldn't finish the brand film. So what we did, that made us very reliant on our community, but fortunately we have an awesome community of people who were very willing to get involved and take photos for us, and though it wasn't what we planned, it actually I think was very, very true to our brand in bringing our community spirit to life, just kind of and bringing our personality to life. So here we've got in this top corner, we've got our ambassador Mark, who is not only very dedicated to the organization, but also an amazing photographer. So he's proudly wearing one of our cycling tops, and he took the picture on the bottom right. We've got my son in the middle, and we've got some of our other supporters on the left hand side. And this is just a snippet of the huge volume of content that we've got from our supporters, which has been so great. And because of them, we've been able to repurpose video content and so on to create some content over the last year. One thing that I did want to show you quickly, if it works, hopefully, keep your fingers crossed, is this film that we produced called Research Actually. So we were wondering what to do for Christmas. We still couldn't go and film anybody. So we couldn't do a traditional Christmas style campaign film, but what we thought was we could jump on a trend that was actually took off the previous year amongst the political parties. So if you remember back in 2019, when they were campaigning, so we had it was Boris Johnson did a spoof of Love Actually.
Rosina Allen Khan
did one too. So there was so basically we had various different examples that we could jump on, and we just thought actually this would be quite a good way to see if we could get some cut through, see if we could tag some celebrities and get them to share for us, and just kind of bring the film to life. But basically, as you can see, we used one of our researchers who was an amazing sport to do this, and she actually filmed herself with some support from one of her lab technicians. And we also have the people who are the watching is Maddie from my team and her boyfriend. So this was all done super low budget, and we just had a bit of help editing it together to kind of produce this film. So I'll move on, but basically that was an example of how we just used people within our community to bring something to life, and it had really good engagement, and we also got a retweet from Hugh Grant that saw one of the biggest spikes I've ever seen, which was really exciting. So yeah, so that was one way in which we kind of used very, very little budget to produce something that had really good impact for us. Just another example, I'm not going to show you the whole of this, but this is another example of how we've used motion graphics really to bring our work to life, because in the absence of lots of film content, it's been very difficult to do that. But again, I'll post this in the chat later. Oops. I say, there we go. Oh God, go away. And now I'm going to hand over to Liam, who's going to talk to you about paid social and the impact that we've had there.
While we're waiting for Liam to play around with his microphone a little bit, there's some great questions going to come in. So I thought I'll just fire one at you while we're waiting.
Why not?
The highest one so far, great question. For digital teams of one, would you still recommend scheduling social posts 2 weeks, 1 month in advance? How do you balance that with reactive content?
So we're not a digital team of one. So so I'm the external comms manager. We do have a social media officer. So I guess pretty much, yeah, she is. That's her kind of number one thing. But we also cover press as well. What was the question again? Balancing reactive.
Yeah, for digital teams of one, would you still recommend scheduling social 2 weeks to a month in advance? And how do you balance that with reactive content?
I don't know. I think the smaller the team is, it gets a lot harder to plan long term. So we have a comms calendar that goes, that can go up to like 6 weeks in advance. But really, it only starts. We only put like really big things in the stuff in the future, and it's only as it comes in, because I don't think people really think longer than a couple of weeks in advance. I mean, I certainly don't. Sometimes I only plan like days in advance. That's how I do it. I don't know. Other people might approach it differently.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, I can barely remember what I've had for breakfast. Never mind know what I'm going to do in 2-3 weeks time. But no, we do something very similar. We put in what we call bendy structures. So you have a set amount of certain stuff that we'll plan a month in advance, but it's always subject to change, and it always has to be. So I think the best advice for that is plan what you can, but leave yourself. I didn't even mean to do that. And that allows yourself the room to maneuver as well. How is Liam getting on? I'm aware that I don't want to stand in the way of good content. There are some great questions, so I don't know if you want to have a crack at Liam's slides, or do you want me to carry on with the questions?
I can have. Can you hear me now?
There he is. A voice from yonder.
I have absolutely no idea what happened then. I tried to reconnect and everything was just flashing on and off like crazy. But I'm going to leave my video off because that seems to have fixed it, and try and push on quickly so we can stick to the time. So yeah, so in this section we basically wanted to touch on how paid social, virtual events, and our brand had kind of worked together. So around the same time Helen was speaking about before, where we kind of transitioned and moved from our original plan with the brand, when COVID hit, we did the same thing with fundraising too, and pivoted towards virtual events. So in the year following COVID and the time we were doing that, we recruited over 4,000 people to virtual events, really raised nearly £1 million, and paid social was the primary method of marketing. So as well as that work for fundraising, it also had secondary benefits for our brand, but the benefits kind of went in both directions as well. So during that time, we may not have had any kind of brand specific campaign, but our virtual events ads reached over 2 million people in the UK with quite a high frequency. So we may have had no brand activity, but our virtual events activity reached a huge number of people. So we feel this has a connection to the results Helen will come on to later in terms of boosting our awareness, but also our new brand worked brilliantly for the actual fundraising and events themselves. So if you go on to the next slide. So it was really a big priority for us. We knew with the fundraising, particularly in COVID times, if we were only going back to our existing fundraisers, we were never going to get to the targets that we had. So it was brilliant that for our virtual events following COVID, around 80%, or in some of our Facebook fundraising events, up to 85% were new supporters to the organization. So even though we'll never go back and do it all again under the old brand, obviously having a strong new brand was a massive part of that. So if we go onto the next slide, and one case study in particular, which was a Walk of Light virtual walking event that took part in March. Next slide. In this, we saw a similar thing. So over 3/4 of the supporters were new to the organization. They'd never engaged with the previous Bloodwise brand before, but now following COVID, they're engaging in event with us for the first time. I think that's over 2,000 signups we had, so that's over 1,500 new supporters to the organization. So next slide. And then not only that, they went on to have a brilliant experience with us, which obviously helped even more. So even though it was a virtual event, people felt really positively with how it's gone. And when asked the question, how likely are you to recommend the event to a friend or colleague, the net promoter score was 65. So just for anyone that's not familiar with this, because I wasn't too much, basically Apple's as a brand is 68. So it's essentially about as good as you can hope for. So I really feel that having that event and having that engagement leaves people with a really strong connection to us. That's a lot stronger than we can do in terms of kind of fundraising or comms alone. So yeah, obviously it's worked for fundraising, but it's also given a whole group of new people engagement with us and a good feeling towards us going forward. And if you go on to the next slide, unsurprisingly, the kind of results of that is the vast majority would come back and fundraise for us again, with only a tiny minority saying they wouldn't. So I think if we go on to the next slide, we can kind of conclude from that. As I said, the benefits kind of go in two directions: the fundraising and virtual event marketing. We did help kind of spread news of the new brand, but it also massively helped our kind of sign-ups and engagement with those new events as well, for both existing and new supporters. So for existing supporters, we have plenty of anecdotal evidence that actually the ads for the virtual events were the first time that many people found out that we'd even changed our name to Blood Cancer UK. Obviously, we hadn't done that brand piece we talked about before. So apart from our very engaged supporters, there were people who weren't even aware that we changed our name. And it was also an opportunity to embed our new brand, new logo, imagery as well. For new supporters, as I kind of touched on before, the first 2 points here are absolutely vital. So the kind of barriers we had with the old brand was, it was Bloodwise that always required an additional kind of explanation to what we did, whether that be a tagline or further copy to explain what we did. With the new name, it just does exactly what it says on the tin. So if people have a connection either through themselves or friends or family to blood cancer, when they see our ad, they see our logo, they know we're the charity for them straight away, which obviously this is absolutely vital for a charity that didn't have amazing awareness like us, and in a space like Facebook or paid social marketing, where people are making a very quick, instant decision on whether they want to support that charity or not. As I said, we'll never go back and kind of A/B test it with Bloodwise, but I think it's been a huge advantage to us in terms of our fundraising in the last year. And as I said, it's been an opportunity to as we use the brand, the messaging and the logo throughout our ads, it was a great opportunity to embed the new brand as well, as we weren't able to do that brand piece. And obviously we reached 4,000 people to sign up, but the vast majority of those people who've reached the 2 million didn't sign up. But who knows, we may have planted a seed. If they're affected by blood cancer later in life, they now know who we are, and they know we exist, and they may sign up to fundraise for us in future. And as I said, I think that almost inevitably we've done so much advertising and reached so many people, that just kind of has to have an impact on awareness, even though that's very much a secondary objective. And I think that's it. Back to Helen.
Thanks, Liam. So just a quick whiz through, because I know time's short, for the kind of the impact of our activity over the last year. So among people affected by blood cancer, we track our brand with YouGov. So these figures are from them. Our awareness has increased from 33% in July last year to 43%. That was actually a figure for, and the comparative figure was 8% to 6% for Bloodwise. Obviously that's going down because we're not promoting Bloodwise at all, but you can see the start point for Bloodwise was not great. And amongst the general public, our awareness has increased from 24% in July to 31% now, and again that was versus 7% to 6% for Bloodwise. So you can see the big difference in the figures, even from like close to the point in which we rebranded. And I won't talk through this, but this is the overall brand health score from YouGov, and all of these green arrows on the right hand side show a significant increase. So the brand health has increased significantly over the last year across lots of different measures, and I'm very happy to talk to people about that in detail afterwards if you want to come and find me. We've increased the number of people that we can email by 31% over the last 12 months, which is pretty huge for us. And we've also had a 100% increase in media inquiries. We didn't get that many proactive inquiries from media when we were Bloodwise, but that that is on the up for Blood Cancer UK, which is really good to see. And we've had some really good successes in the media. And just quickly whizzing through some of our social stats. So since 31st of March last year when we launched, our social media audience has grown by 7.7%. So we've got a total of nearly 150,000 across all platforms. And the rate of growth was 82.7% higher than the previous 12 months. Social media posts have been viewed almost 45 million times, which is 359% higher than the previous 12 months. Engagement was 354% higher than the previous 12 months. We had 245,000 plus visits to our website from social media, and that is 262% higher than the previous 12 months. But most importantly, it's had a huge impact for people affected by blood cancer. We've been able to support them through what's been a really, really tough year. A lot of people have been shielding for more than 12 months now. That has a huge impact on their mental health. But just to see supportive messaging or messaging that takes them away from that, distracts them somewhat or makes them laugh, and keeps them updated with the latest information, we're getting a lot of feedback that it's really supporting them, and that's basically what we're here to do. So that's it from us, and over to you for any questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hang on.
Thank you. Amazing stuff. Thank you very much for sharing. That was truly amazing story. Really quite enjoyed that. I actually laughed out loud at the Noel Gallagher bit. It was pretty fantastic. But we've got loads of questions, so I'm going to try and fire through a few in the next sort of 5-6 minutes, and then we'll let everybody go off for another break, and they can chase you down to ask more. Top of the list. What's your process? Obviously, you showed a lot of reactive social content that was really funny. What's your process for posting that content on social? Does it have to be signed off first, or do you kind of just go out on a whim and know your audience so well you just go for it?
So a bit of both. We've got like our team is empowered enough that we think we know our brand and what buttons we can press and how we can press a little bit, where we can go a bit further, that we can do it autonomously. So I always say to Lauren, who's our social media officer, that like to just literally run it past me, and I'll knock it up if it's something that we think is actually going to be a bit of a reputational risk. But yeah, obviously we have sort of editorial meetings and brand meetings as well, where we can talk about stuff that might be a little bit more of a risk. But yeah, no, we have we're quite autonomous, I would say.
Sorry, go on, Helen.
No, I was just going to say, yes, I think I would said, I think we do, as he said, we have a weekly editorial meeting, and we have a weekly comms planning meeting as well, where we can talk about things that are current that we may think of doing, but quite often they are things that come up really quickly. Of all of those examples, the one that I think that there was more discussion around was the £90 mask, because obviously that had an impact on our shop. It had an impact on, how was this going to go down from a fundraising point of view. So there were more discussions around that.
Great. And an immediate follow-up question. Obviously, you're using other content and people's faces and stuff. There's a lot of questions about, have you ever faced any copyright issues, or how do you go about making sure that you don't face any copyright issues?
That's a very good point.
Is it a case of forgiveness, not permission?
Oh, definitely.
So where they're celebrity supporters of ours, it depends on, we have consent to use. We wouldn't use something without consent, and we obviously have a very careful consent process for user-generated content and people within our community as well. Have we ever faced copyright issues? Yes, we have, but not as Blood Cancer UK. There was something that I dealt with fairly recently that was back from 2012. I won't go into details here, but if anyone wants to talk to me about it afterwards, very happy to. But I think, yeah, you do have to be really super careful about what you share and what you don't.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's within the tone as well, which I think from the presentation you've got that pretty much spot on. So it depends where the line is, I suppose, doesn't it? You mentioned UGC there, which is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's such a powerful tool for any charity, really. There's a really good question from Maxine here about how did you encourage your supporters to get involved in UGC, to take and share those photographs?
We put shout outs, didn't we, Lawrence? Actually,
shout outs, yeah. And And also like it's going back to like Walk of Light and stuff like that. It just kind of happened. Our sports team set up Facebook groups, and people doing events even during lockdown have had a real community sense. And we've got virtual cycling events that go on, and people are just posting their photos in there all the time. I don't know if Liam wants to talk about that a bit more, but it's just it's quite amazing to behold, actually.
Yeah, there were a couple of people that we approached direct just because we knew that they were keen photographers, and they would have the desire to support us in that way, like Mark that I mentioned. But most of the time it is people tend to share pictures across our forums and channels and so on anyway. So it was just then going back to them and just saying, are you happy for us to use this, and following up from a consent point of view.
Great, thank you. Next question, and feel free to divulge this information or not. People are interested to understand what sort of budget you had for the paid marketing campaign that you ran that raised that that 800,000.
Liam,
can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick. I tried to put video back on, but it didn't like it, so I'm just gonna say it as a voice only. So I put it in the chat a second ago before, but yeah, a lot of people might not have seen it. So it was approximately, well, in paid social was approximately 45k across everything, including some paid search as well. It was probably more like 50, 55. But yeah, I guess that probably sounds like a lot to some people, probably sounds like not very much to others, but that's just everything combined. So over the last like 14 months. So again, I can talk more about it in the networking after, but yeah, that's kind of, it's hard to generalize about the whole thing because parts of that spend had an incredible return on investment. Walk of Light that I touched on was one example. Other things like not so much. So that's kind of it's grouping a lot of things together, which had quite different results, but obviously great results overall.
Magic. And one very last question to end on. I think it's a really good one. You mentioned right at the beginning of the presentation that an earlier rebrand caused a lot of confusion and lower awareness. Huge risk is obviously when you set about doing a rebrand. How can other charities avoid doing that when they rebrand?
So I think one of the things that we did, or that we learned when we were kind of embarking on the brand evaluation and coming to a decision on whether we did need to rebrand from Bloodwise, was we involved all of our community very much in that process. And what we found from those conversations was that a lot of them felt that they hadn't been included previously. None of us were here when that happened, so we can't say whether that was true or not. But that was the sentiment that came through from our audience. So we knew we had to almost over engage them in developing the brand and making them feel ownership of the brand, but also helping us to steer the brand in the right way. So I think one of the things that we did was we set up a brand steering group, and we had people with blood cancer on that group. So it wasn't just staff, but it was staff representing teams across the organisation, but also people with blood cancer. We also tested the brand. We did that through a mixture of qualitative and quantitative testing, just to make sure that what people got from the brand was what we wanted to communicate. But there are very cheap ways in which you can do that if you're on a low budget as well. You can test quite quickly on, we did some we used YouGov polls to get some of the insights that we needed as well. And they're relatively inexpensive, but yeah, we just made sure that we tested with a cross section of people from across the community, and people who didn't know about us, to make sure that it would do the job that we needed it to do.
Yeah, and just to go on from that, like as Helen says, we were communicating with our audience the whole time. So I was here just when we changed our name the last time. I just got in through the door, so I'm not to blame, but but definitely this time round the communication was spot on. And so when we changed our name originally to Bloodwise, it was like big reveal on the day that we're actually changing it, whereas this time there was no surprise. Everyone that had a real stake in our charity knew that it was coming, and had been taken on the journey of why we were changing the name as well. So they were involved in the whole process. And
from just to add to that, from a digital point of view, one thing that made a big difference was that our chief executive gave regular updates using just videoing herself. So she did pieces to camera that we put on YouTube and subtitled, but we also put a transcript on, so that people knew it was very transparent all the way along, and people had the chance to feedback at every stage as well.
It's good. Great. Yeah, involve people. Imagine. Well, look, thank you very much, all three of you, Helen, Lawrence, and Liam. Thanks for your time. Thanks a lot.
Chris.
Thanks.